Hey, so we're here at Store and Vintage for 1800 Tequila. I'm Mowgli May and I'm joined by Kwasi and Pez.
What's up? What's up?
You're both rappers from Melbourne, but you're a rapper slash producer. You want us to
He's got
include
the
that?
slash artist slash sexy man.
Oh damn!
Ooh.
Horse. I ain't got no slashes. I gotta work on that.
You two, like you're both at like such different stages of your career. Like you've been starting out, you're like a bit more established. So like, what do you reckon like you wish you had known before you started? Like if you were gonna give advice.
You hear stuff that's dope, and you want to sound like this or want to sound like that, but you sort of also got to find something that makes you unique. Like what is it that you can do that no one else can do, and hopefully that reaches people. Because if it does, that's when people's lane opens up, and then everyone's like, oh shit, that's working for them. They want to start doing that as well. That's the tricky thing, I think, for a lot of people coming up, where you hear all these things you like. Often you might sound a lot like them, and then it's like, oh, we've already got that, or we've already got this, and you're trying to just find where's your little niche, like what separates you from everyone else. So that's probably the thing I'd say to people coming up, is just trying to find that a little bit as you're exploring, like, or just be really dope. If you're really good, sometimes that's just undeniable, and people are like, man, you just sound really good, or I don't know, there's no rules, it's weird.
Yeah.
So like, don't get set in your ways, I guess.
That's a big
Adjusting fast is like so key. I
Yeah,
think.
that's something for me
adjust
to learn
fast.
too. Like when it was like stepping away for long periods and then coming back, it's like you can't be stuck in your ways anymore. It's so much more international now too. It's sort of gone full circle to when I think about when it started, like when Australian hip hop here just actually got a little wave in. The big battle we were all fighting at the start was we all loved hip hop, but to try and do hip hop here sounded ridiculous. Like if you told your friends like, oh, I'm gonna rap, they're like laugh in your face or whatever. And it was like this big battle between people that obviously love hip hop, wanted to sound American, or then other people that were trying to say, I'm actually Australian. Like, do we need to try and sound Australian when we rap? Oh, it sounds terrible. That was the big push at the start, was this little breakthrough that when people suddenly accepted it, that like you could be Australian and rap. And it sort of became cool enough to have its own little wave for a bit, and now it's kind of circling back around to where we all still love hip hop from America, and that's what everyone sort of still wants to sound like. So it's interesting just watching it unfold.
So what do you think of the recent momentum Australian hip hop has had? Because it seems like it's never been bigger, like there's a real huge push. But then also I was thinking like, you know, people probably felt that back when like Hilltop Hoods were like dominating the charts and stuff. Like it probably felt the same.
Just a different wave, I think.
Yeah.
Like, obviously it's more diverse, but it's also, I think culturally, like that's been primed. Like the culture here has actually changed, where people want to hear that. They want to hear different voices from the community and different people who look like this, who look like that, different like that's what people want now. They want variety of everything.
What do you think about like the new wave? Because like you're part of it.
That's right.
It's dope. As he was saying, I think back in the day, the idea of hip hop, just anyone doing hip hop in Australia was a crazy thought. But then when you looked at who was doing hip hop then, it was, I guess there was no one really representing me, or people of different, nationalities and whatnot. And then as more people of color and stuff came in this country, and it's built, people that represent, they have people to look up to that are making hip hop as well. Yeah, so when I started out, I guess one of the things that drove me is I didn't really see anyone that looked like me doing it on that scale. And I was still inspired by, say, the more Australian guys that were doing it. It was really inspiring to see. But at the same time, I still felt a little bit different and disconnected from it. So for me, it was kind of exciting.
You definitely felt that sense of like, this doesn't actually speak to me, this doesn't represent
It was just
me.
it was a little different. I guess, like if your parents are a little different or something like that, I don't know what it is about it. It was just kind of like, there wasn't someone exactly that I could relate to. It was like the American stuff was there, and that was just hella gangster shit. And I was like, eh. Yeah. And then there was the really Australian stuff
which we all love too as well, which is the funny thing. So you're all trying to figure out how to like, what's my own unique voice at the same time.
Yeah, 100%, yeah. So I guess it's a struggle of every individual, but I think it was very prevalent because even I grew up in a country area and there was not many like African people around and things like that as well. So it was an interesting thing to navigate at the start, and then as time went on, there was artists that popped up that were like dope, that were of color, there was, different nationalities and everything. It was really good.
Yeah. I know me and Kwasi were sort of talking about this before, like backstage or whatever, but it was like about the representation thing, because I know with me coming up, like getting into hip hop, as I was saying to you, like when I think of like me idolizing Puck or Biggie or Jigga or these dudes, I never really thought about the fact that I was white and that they were black, or you know, we shared the fact that we both. I think on some level, I loved the fact that they were so talented. I resonated with the music, but also they were so entrepreneurial. So like, I come from like a poor background, they've come from poverty, and then they're millionaires. So it was kind of like inspiring.
Yeah.
But I never thought about, oh, they don't represent me. I had to wait until Eminem came along, and then I'm like, oh, see, a white guy can do it, and I love him because he's white. I never really got into him on that level. So it was like, I just wanted to sort of unpack that more with you, or like have you elaborate on that feeling of the representation thing.
Also, that was more like, so I looked those artists based, okay, so I saw more of a gap as in there wasn't people from Australia that were of skin color, that were like representing. And that was more like, I would love to like just go, like I haven't seen that before, and it's inspiring to think that and to try and do that. More in that sort of thing,
So there was a sense of an actual gap, or that's not here, and that's when you feel excluded or whatever from it, rather than us all, I guess, loving. Do you think skin color has a lot to do with why you loved rappers in America? Was there identity in it that you're like, oh, they're black, I'm black?
100%.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. So, because I grew up in like more of a smaller country town kind of area, I was one of the pretty much first kid of color in my school. So for me, that was like, if I ever ran into, you know, it was certain, you know, because as younger kids, you wouldn't say it's like hateful racism or anything like that. If I ran into problems at school and someone made a comment, you know, about the way I look, that was an escape for me to like put Tupac in my ears and have him be someone that's so proud of that and talk about that sort of thing. It's just like, hell yeah.
That's
and then I think, leading on from that, then it was like, who's doing that here in Australia though? Because the rest of the gangster stuff, I don't know too much about, but that part like hit me. I felt that, you know what I mean?
I think what's so cool about hip hop now, it's not just Tupac or Biggie. You have like a Kanye, a Childish Gambino, like a Chance. Like they're not from like gangster rap. They represent like the kind of new kids, and I feel like a lot of kids identify with them. Like, I'm not a gangster, but you know, like Chance or Childish. And also women, like now there's so many more women rappers, like especially in America, like with Cardi and Megan Thee Stallion and Nicki Minaj. And
Cardi's badass though, like she's hard as. But then it's like, if you think of like Lauryn Hill or whatever, like they're always, I think you hear that like discussion a lot where it's like people start thinking in terms of like quotas, where it's like, we need more women so this feels more even and all this sort of stuff. But
it's
more
not
than,
about that though.
more than anything, you just actually want people that, like a meritocracy where people are there because they're actually dope. Like when you think of Lauryn Hill, like 100%. She was like better than all the, like there's a few guys that could hang with her, and it was like, she was undeniably like off the fucking planet of like how talented she is, and she sort of chose to step away or whatever, but it was like, that's what you kind of want, where it's like, she's
I think you're getting that in the States now though, the amount of female artists that are just like so good, because I think there was that time when there wasn't heaps, and they all just stepped it up so much, and it's just like, it's wild. Like there's so many good artists coming out there.
Do you think like, so like, let's say a festival is booking, like, you know, they're booking the lineup and they're making a concerted effort to put more females on the lineup. Like, does it matter where it's coming from as long as they get it done?
Well, that's the big thing I want to kind of unpack a little bit, is more just like, can you dial back? I think we'd all be in agreement that like having a more diverse lineup, whether it's sex or race or all those things, is always like, it's great because you're getting more sprinkles and flavors and all this. It's more interesting. It's like awesome. What we're saying is we want a more even representation of everyone. That's the desired goal. I'm just wondering whether it ends as a happy ending like that, or like it becomes this kind of like pretty ruthless quest for that, and then all that happens is it sort of starts to invert, and then you're like wanting to discriminate against these people to get even with this, and like where does it stop to some, I don't know. It fascinates me a bit, like whether it actually like
an all-white, all-male lineup just is not an accurate representation of like Australia or Australian hip-hop right now and today. So I don't think it's like realistic. Or
it's like happening, and like I think the movement's good, the momentum behind everything is good, I think.
So you've been around longer than like Kwasi or me, so you've seen like more. This momentum Australian hip-hop is having right now, is it like the biggest you've seen it, or you reckon back then it was like a heavier push, or you reckon now is like the moment and the time for Australian hip-hop?
I think it's
like,
definitely the time. I think for me, I guess I was probably in the bubble as it was happening, so I was caught up in the wave. It was like really hectic and life-changing, where I went from being on Centrelink to like, you know, like it was kind of like
touring.
And like make all this money like you dreamed about. So I was like, that was a crazy time. where now I've been more like stepped away multiple times. It's more like you're observing. But I mean, say like the Hoods who were part of that initial wave, they just sold out Rod Laver Arena 2 nights in a row. Like that, that's so incomprehensibly incredible that you're just like, it's obviously bigger now than it's ever been. And then you've also got all these other incredible voices, like you were saying, like even the like Briggs and Trials and that, how they like just came out of nowhere. And then it's like Baker Boy, like literally actually raps in his native tongue. People will actually want to hear that though. So Sampa and Remy and all those sort of people, like they're undeniably like really amazing. They're killing it because of that. They're like doing an international thing. Like it's sort of like,
I guess that goes back to what you were saying before as well. Maybe earlier on, people tried to class something like that as not good, and then because someone gave them the chance through wanting more diversity, it gave them the stage to actually progress in that manner.
Yeah.
Which is kind of dope. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, and like reach people who've never heard them before, who might necessarily not have come across their music. Like you see them on a lineup and you might go check them out, or like you see them live and you're like, oh my God, like I really like her, like she's so dope.
You can't really gauge that
Introducing
unless they're given
new,
the opportunity.
In the first place.
Yeah.
Who's your favorite like local artist
A
that
local
you're
artist?
really into?
It's funny I say this. I didn't want to say this, but Sydney has so much good shit coming out
I
right now.
agree.
Like
No shade.
Manu's
to you
boss,
guys.
man.
Yeah,
Manu,
Manu's
that whole
awesome.
crew.
Yeah.
Like
That
Travi
whole
P,
crew's
I think he's
Yeah, he's from
I think he's
Brisbane, but he
Brisbane.
lives in Sydney.
Kid Leroy,
Yeah.
Be Wise.
With all of this being discussed, where do you guys think Australian hip hop is headed? Like we've got Kid Leroy playing like Rolling Loud in New York, and like Manu recently did the one in Miami as well. Sampa the Great and Remy like have toured Europe like a bunch of times.
Yep.
Where do you think Australian hip hop is going?
I think that it looks like because it was like that continued thing of looking for like who is the one that's going to be like the international artist and do
Breakthrough.
it. But I think it's getting past that now, just realizing there's like a broad spectrum
There is no
of talented
one.
artists.
Yeah.
There's no like one song or one style they have to make. As we were talking about before, it's just like there's people doing well that are representing all different types of people.
Just
And I think,
permeating like out.
Yeah, and I think it's just going to hopefully get bigger and just
It
keep
seems
doing
like
that.
you were saying, I'd actually it'll just keep expanding as it is. And then, like you said, then more people come out from underneath and you're like, oh shit, now there's this person sort of doing that, but even better. And you're like, I guess that's what all of that diversity thing is. It's like you're just literally broadening the palette and you just watch it happen. Like it's like you're planting seeds everywhere and it just keeps, and
The steady grind.
steady grind, but it happens. And you might get one artist that comes along and just goes, holy shit, and they just blow up overseas. And then you're like, oh man, they just put us on the map for real.
Yeah, that's
it might
it.
happen, like absolutely.
For sure.
But more than anything, I think where you were saying, like, and even what Kwasi was saying with like being represented, it's like every time that person from that community has suddenly breaks through, there's a whole nother demographic of people that maybe didn't feel represented, weren't listening to it, and now they're like, he's my guy or that's my girl, whatever, and they're like, now they love it. So now suddenly out of that pool of people, someone else might come out as an artist, and then you're like, and that's literally what you're doing. You're just spreading it, and it's sort of theoretically, it's only going to go up.
As humans, visually representation is just an easy thing to latch to, but it can be always way deeper than
that.
Like
There's
it
more
doesn't.
to it.
That's not the be all end all.
Yeah.
That's something that we definitely all got kind of clicked with
Yeah,
initially. I reckon.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kwasi, and thank you, Pez, for
Thanks for having
this
us.
chat. It's been real.
It has been real.
Tell you that because there's a lot of people who've been asking where's your album at. I gotta hand those fans love for sticking with me when I didn't have an answer.